Okay, today we have a great opportunity. I'm Jennifer Gambrell. Sorry, I forget who my name is. And I'm the Assistant Director at OEQA and the Director of ELO, which is Education Leadership Oklahoma. I don't direct the band. Some of you are that old, some of you are not. But it's our National Board Program for Oklahoma, and that's what they named it years ago. So I get to work with National Board teachers, National Board candidates all the time. So we were thinking about how to talk about this process. So we've brought some candidates, NBCTs, at different portions of their certification. And so today we have Sarah. And Sarah, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we're going to introduce Sherry too. So
I am Sarah Major. I'm an elementary librarian for Stillwater Public Schools. I started my career as an elementary teacher and taught a couple of different grade levels, worked on my master's in educational technology, and then moved into the library media position. I just completed my 7th year of teaching, and am learning a lot about what it means to be a teacher during distance learning.
Okay, and you're in your first year of being a National Board candidate, right?
Yes, this is my first year.
Okay, and we have Sherry here, Sherry Ring is Sarah's regional coordinator. So Sherry, if you want to introduce yourself again.
I am Sherry Ring. I've taught for 19 years. I certified for National Board in 2011, and I was eligible for renewal this year, so I renewed and am awaiting renewal results in the fall.
So Sherry, we're just going to have a conversation. So anything I forget, which could be very possible, you just jump in and bail me out. So Sarah, this year is your first year, and National Board is very flexible. And there are 4 components, but you decided, teachers can decide anyway that they want to take those, but you decided to just jump right off.
Yes, I decided to tackle all 4 components this year. I think that was driven from a place of just wanting to know. I felt like if I did all 4 components and then I struggled with one, that having the experience of trying the other components would help me in that process. And also, I am a little impatient. And so I thought, well, I'd rather know in December if I need to redo any components or move on. I also tend to be a little bit of a workaholic. And so I thought that it would be a good thing to focus on this spring. It was a really interesting experience, though, because as I worked on components, I would go back, and that reflective piece of the process really came into play, because I would work on component 2, and then it would really make me think about component 3 when I got to it. And pushing it back and forth and working between all of those elements at the same time was kind of a lot, but I felt like it was a really well-rounded experience to reflect on all of the different parts of being an educator at the same time.
And you had a few in your school that were going through at the same time, but they didn't all decide to do all 4.
No.
So can you, I know you've worked with them, so can you tell me kind of why they decided and how they decided to lay it out?
Yes. So one teacher at our school went to an information meeting last summer and learned about the process and the scholarship. And so she really initiated our cohort and sent out an email and said, I'm thinking about doing this. I'd love to talk to you about the opportunity through the Oklahoma scholarship program. And so we got together and decided to work on it all at the same time. There were 6 of us. The other 5 teachers in my cohort at my school were all working on early childhood. And as a librarian, I decided to do the library media program. So as we sat down and looked at what was coming up in the semester, what they felt like was doable, where we were at, they really felt like they wanted to take a slower approach. They wanted to really commit to doing one of the components that dealt with instruction. And then they all chose to take the assessment. And we all scheduled that later in June so that it would kind of be like focusing on the one instruction component and then taking the test over the summer. And that process worked out really well for them. Many of them have families and they have other things that they're working on in their careers. And so it was the right pace for them. And working with them was great because it really grounded me in, they went really deep in a lot of areas when it came to the component they were working on, which really helped me reflect and pushed me to go a little bit deeper in some areas too. So it worked out really well.
So I know you met as a school and just because you worked together, but so you had that support, but then Sherry also had regional meetings.
Yes.
So Sherry, do you want to talk a little bit about your support at the region level and how that looks?
At the regional level, we try to meet once a month, and what we do is we break it down. Like certain months, we focus on certain areas, like the standards one month, just in getting into the introduction of everything. And then in the next month, we will go to the 5 core propositions. And then we kind of branch out into the overall overview of each component and what it entails. However, there will be differences among certifications. So to not overwhelm, we just kind of break it into smaller chunks. Then usually by the end of December, January, February, they can kind of make their decisions on what they want to move forward with or which components they want to do. And then we start focusing more on each person's certification areas and the requirements for that.
And that support at the region is more global because you have library media candidates, you have early childhood candidates, you have high school English candidates, but it's still, we're all going through this same thought process, but it's at that higher level where it's like, okay, each component, this is what's required, here's the dates, reminders. So it's a little different than the state meetings. And so I'm just going to ask you, Sarah, we also have support at the state meeting, which is just a trainer in your area. So it's just library media. And you got basically one-on-one most of the time.
Yep.
So what did that state support in those meetings look like?
So the regional support was really great because there were people that were further in the process in our meetings. And so like one of the meetings we sat down and we proofread someone else's component or looked over, and so that was really helpful for me to give me a sample of like, oh, this is what this could look like, right? And because we were talking more about the process at regional meetings, when I met with Martha at the state meetings and we talked just about library, we could really dive into the standards and how those affect our area. So it was really great to have those pieces because I could rely on Sherry for help with the writing, the putting it together, the planning it out. But then when I had questions about specific lessons or specific reflections, I could lean on Martha's support as a library media specialist. So it was awesome.
And I like to remind everybody of this because when we meet at the national level, Oklahoma is one of the only states that all of that support is free.
Yeah, it's amazing I have colleagues that work in a couple of other states and they're like, oh, I would never do national boards. That would be way too much work. And it was so interesting to me because when you have so many people to call and ask questions to, it makes it so much better. I had 7 people that I had on speed dial basically the whole time to call and reflect with. And that was so helpful.
And I'm glad you feel that way because that's how we've tried to set our support up, how we've kind of got it different ways because you do have different needs at different times. And I think it's great that you also have that core at your school too, which is a good example for anybody that's thinking about it. I always say bring a friend.
Absolutely.
Because you'll need that friend at 2 a.m. when the computer is blacking out or whatever.
Well, and as we reached the submission deadline, it was like a daily text, like, okay, where are you at? Where are you at? And then one person would submit and, we'd have a big group text party, like, yay, good job. And then the next person. So we were kind of pushing each other to completion and then also like calling each other crying, like, I cannot get this paper, the link that I need it, and because you do go through those highs and lows through the process. And so it was really great to have a good group of friends to do this with and then a great group of experts to help.
Great. So I have a question about why you've talked a lot about the reflection and looking at all of it as a whole. So what would you say at this point? Scores aren't out. This is the lovely time of waiting. So what do you think the best part or your favorite part or what part do you keep going back to in this process?
So when I got both of my degrees and I went through those processes, it was a lot of gaining new information and gaining strategies, right? So gathering best practices and going through national boards, it was really great to analyze where I was at as a teacher. And this was a really interesting time period in my career because it kind of hit me this past year, like this was my 7th year of teaching. I'm not the new kid in the building anymore. And so it really helped me think about, if I'm going to be an experienced teacher in my site, am I still committed to the best part of teaching? And going through the process helped me kind of brush up on those strategies and it really affirmed me in a lot of ways of like, okay, I am doing some things right. And of course, I found gaps where I maybe wasn't doing things as well as I wanted to be or as well as I thought I was. And so it was a great kind of check in with myself of like, okay, this is the best in teaching. Where do I think I measure up on this? And how can I be better for my kids?
That's a great thought process. I think I'm going to use that. It's a great check-in because when you're talking to teachers and they're thinking about it, some people think, oh, it's just too hard or, too much time. But a check-in, because that really hits everybody.
Yeah.
Where am I? What am I? Let's think about this. Okay, so I'm also going to ask the bad question. What part of National Board was your worst enemy?
Well, so we didn't go back to school after spring break, and I was nervous because obviously there were I was doing all 3 instruction heavy components with student data and parent communication and all of those things. And so I had set myself up to do a lot of practice runs before spring break because I thought, okay, if I'm going to look at this over spring break and if I don't feel good about where I'm at, then I could come back and reteach it. And then I ended up not being able to come back and reteach it. But then I got so in some ways I was really prepared, but then in other ways I really procrastinated. And I got in my head a little bit and like, oh, I just don't know. I don't know if it's going to happen. And I don't know if this is good enough. And so I think there's a little bit of that self-doubt, but I think reflecting on it, I think that affirms that I'm on the right path as an educator because I think it's healthy for you to doubt yourself and for you to think like, am I really doing what's right for kids? And so I would say there was a little bit of procrastination that was the hard part, and then a little bit of just like not really being sure. And that's where the system that Oklahoma has in place really came in because, Sherry was emailing me like, this is fine. You got this. You were emailing us like, it's okay. Come on. The weekly check-ins, the Zoom meetings and stuff, they were really helpful in that part.
And I sure hope we don't have a year. This year was very different, and it was every week. Okay, this is what I know this week. Okay, this is what I know this week. So it was a little different, but I also think National Board did a great job at making those arrangements. So I think that maybe just that confidence of everybody to know, okay, National Board's going to make some changes too.
Right. They were so accommodating in listening to us about what our concerns were and being flexible on some of the deadlines and making things available. I mean, it was great to know that they were working as hard as they could to make this as normal as possible for us. Because there were parts that it felt like this probably wasn't normal,
Oh no, this wasn't. It was a very strange year, and I think they've done a good job of. So, you've talked about COVID. So I think that the only other thing I want to ask is just what is there that if someone's listening, what's the one thing that you haven't talked about that you want somebody to know about this process?
I think there are a lot of ideas about what a grueling process the National Boards program is. And I grew up a kid of teachers, and I remember the big binders and the boxes and the shipping it all off and being nervous about it getting lost in the mail and all of those things. And technology has really come such a long way, and it's a deep thinking process, and there's definitely a lot of work to do in the process, but it wasn't as impossible as it seemed when we started. When I went to the first information meeting, I was like, I don't know that this is going to be something that I really want to do. But the process, the Oklahoma program, the people that I worked with really made it much easier than I thought it was going to be. And I think a lot of people get scared of the national board process, but it has probably been the most beneficial thing I've done for my career.
Okay, Sherry, is there anything that you want people to remember or know about just the whole national board process?
Think on that one. I'm going to use a person as an example. As I sit in regional meetings and I go to state meetings, I sit there with those candidates and get their scores back, and they just, I don't know what I did wrong. They give you a sentence or two about what to look at to make it better. But when I'm sitting there and I see somebody and we're talking through what they could do to make it better, and the light bulb comes on and it hits them by answering the question, and then you go, okay, they've kind of made that transition from being a teacher to an accomplished teacher. And that's probably one of the things about National Board is it is transitioning you from just going in and doing repetitive day in, day out. I'm here 8 to 4, not looking at data, or whatever. But when those aha moments come, that's joyful because it's other people are going through that process to be accomplished and provide what's best for all of the students in our state.
Okay, so we have to wait till December, and we sure hope that it has balloons and fireworks, and but if not, we will keep working and hopefully we'll check back in. But I want to thank you for your honest thoughts about it, because I want people to really know what this process looks like and what happens in the process. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.